Music magazine evaluation. Right, question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? So I'll start with the front cover. Firstly, I used a conventional masthead. I got the inspiration from NME because it's really bold and stands out against a different coloured background. So I chose white and black. It's catchy, memorable and fully relates to music, the title Voice. And I did, on my music questionnaire, I did a tally and I asked everyone what title would suit best, and this is the one that got most choices. The image, I chose this one because it has direct eye contact to the camera. That makes a personal relationship to the reader, and with the black and white, it's kind of stylish as well. And I chose the artist name as the kicker because I got inspirations from these magazines. So as you can see here, P. Diddy and Jay-Z, and so I did that with mine. Secondly, I airbrushed the picture to make it look really doll-like, because that's what most magazines are doing nowadays, making sure their picture, their front cover image is really perfect and looking really stylish. The main thing that I think people see when they look at this magazine cover is the really simplistic style, because there's only one kicker and only a little bit of explanatory text. But I still think I used conventional style with the barcode, and overall just the look of it, I think it's very conventional. I didn't really do anything too out of the box. Here I tried to stick to the rule of thirds. So I noticed that quite a lot of magazines use this. So for example, here, her eyes fall onto the golden rules. So I did that with mine. And I think the audience can really appeal to that because it's as if the artist is looking directly at them. And also here you can see direct eye contact to the camera. I just think it's really effective if you just have the artist's face just looking straight at you. I think the audience will want to read on. However, I challenged conventions in the sense that, again, as I said, the simplistic style. Here, for example, it is quite simplistic because it has not a lot of kickers, but here there's still a bit of text and the barcode is on the top. How I used conventional users on my double page spread is the fact that I had a main image on the left side. The image wall goes alongside the main page, the left side page, sorry, here, and lots of magazines use that. I used a pull quote at the top of the main image and on the magazine section. I used a slug, here exclusive. I used my text in columns, which is very conventional. My colour scheme, it goes throughout, so you can see the browns and you can see the blacks, the text. I have a byline on the side of the image, so or like who took the picture and who wrote the text. I also have a page number on the bottom right page, and my language is very informal and colloquial. However, I challenged conventional users on my double page spread because firstly, I had a tilted pull quote. I did that just to make it more interesting, give it a bit of an angle, because otherwise I think everything will be like too perfect. I used the article title in a bit of a grungy font. My text is in Impact, however I chose this font from Da Font because I think it stands out and makes it look more interesting. I also used brushes here on top of the images, and they are basically stamps on a passport, and I chose that because the title is On the Road with Rianne Ray. So as you can see here, I also used another brush with a stamp that goes with the title of the article. However, as you can see, the image wall here, and it relates to all these other magazines, and the pull quote on the left image, as you can see here. And that's what just challenging conventional rules. Now, with the contents page, conventional uses and and what I developed was I had an editorial pillar like other magazines, for example here, and they were very detailed with a lot of text. I had a contents title which is very simple but very bold in a sans serif font. It's large and thick, which will catch the audience's attention. I have the magazine title, the issue number and the date. I also have a double page spread preview, like here, however they use a front cover. I have thick page numbers on the bottom of each picture. Well, not the bottom, but certain bits of each picture, like here. I demonstrated house style, and I think I did that by the use of my colours. You can see everything's quite bright and uses a lot of red, purples, light pinks. And using these colours, they connote with love, rock, style, pop. I think any audience can relate themselves to these colours. So boys with, maybe blacks and blues, girls especially with pinks and purples. I tried to use on my contents page lots of variation of pictures. So for example here I chose a concert style, here I chose a studio kind of style, and here like an outside location style of photo. I also used front cover previews here, like on that magazine, and I did a very conventional thing, which is to use a plain white background. However, I challenged conventional users. Firstly, I varied the page numbers. I did that to make it more interesting and highlight certain important stories. So for example here, cover story, the page number is bigger. I also added brush effects to make the page stand out and look more interesting and artistic. I also, what I mainly did was with my pictures, draw white lines, because it makes the pictures look very different and authentic. Question 2. How does your media product represent particular social groups? My target audience is young, stereotypically cool, stylish trendsetters interested in music and music artists, both male and female, of a young age, from 16 to 26. So I have the language very colloquial, slang, informal, registered and uncensored and controversial. For example, my front cover has the word sexuality, and on my double page spread I used crappy top, and front cover I used the word bi, and on the contents page hotspot. The images, the models looked very young, so they had a similar age to the target audience. My double page spread, the artist is 19, front cover 16. They're wearing cool clothing, which is something all young people want to have. Lots of makeup, which is something young people, girls, have. They look like your ideal cool teenagers, so I think that would attract young audiences. Also, my contents page, the images are in clubs, in other cities, in concerts, which is places young people go to, or if not, would want to go. The colour, my front cover colour scheme is black and white, which connotes with style and trends. And my contents page has a lot of purple, pink, which especially attracts girls. So I think in music magazines, their main demographic is boys. So I wanted my magazine to reach to both genders, therefore I applied that colour to appeal to girls. Social grading, I decided that my magazine could apply to all the above. Firstly, students, that's my main target. However, because they're students doesn't mean they'll be above. So all of these apply. And also another thing is that my magazine price. I priced it quite reasonably for a weekly magazine at $2.50. So my target audience could potentially afford it. These are some psychographic models. So all my target audience could fit into all of these. Firstly, mainstream streamers, they want a conventional magazine, as you can see by my front cover. Aspirers, so they want materialistic and fashion, like my front cover as well, with the image of the black and white, the very airbrushed photo. Explorers, so individualism and experience, so my contents fade with the brushes and everything, it's very authentic. And reformers, so freedom. I think I portray that through my language of sexuality and stuff. It's uncensored. Question 3. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why? I chose Bauer Media. This is because it has market-leading music and entertainment titles, including Q, Mojo and Kerrang! Now, I did take into consideration that they already have music magazines. However, Q is a monthly magazine, mine would be a weekly. Mojo is more classic, and mine is a very modern, contemporary magazine, up to date with all the gossip and artist trends. And their demographic is affluent male, which is not what my demographic is, because mine is reaching out to young, both genders. And Kerrang! Is a rock magazine, whereas mine fits into the more pop, mainstream music. It reaches 90 million adults with its influential brands, and even though these are adults, Bauer is very used to publishing for young demographics, so as I mentioned, the above magazines. My unsuitable choices, the ones I chose not to take into consideration, were IPC, because it has too many attributes similar to my magazine, so therefore it would be a huge competitor, and I don't think there is a place for my magazine there. Nast publishes magazines with demographics very different to my own. So for example, they publish magazines like Vogue, GQ, Nast Traveller and Easy Living. So mostly they're ABC 1 social grading adults ranging from about 25 to 40. So my magazine would be unsuitable for them. Future PLC is the biggest guitar publisher in the world, so therefore I think it's a very rock genre and it's very different from the values of my magazine. So Bauer would be the most suitable. Question 4. Who would be the audience for your media product? She is someone that could typically fit my audience demographic. They're young, stereotypically cool, stylish trendsetters, interested in music and music artists, both male and female, aged 16 to 26. I wanted my magazine to focus on being a stylish and entertaining source of information on trends, innovation in music, and music culture in general for the young generation. So I wanted it to provide, especially for music fans, music lovers, and something a bit different, which I don't think can be found in any contemporary music magazines nowadays, is to provide for aspiring young artists. So maybe give them tips on how to succeed, which reflects in my double-page spread, because it's an article about a young artist who has just gone into the business. And I wanted it to be a weekly magazine for young people, so a lot of gossip in relation to music news would be featured. Therefore, the audience should be hungry of being up to date with all the latest music trends. Question 5. How did you attract, address your audience? On my music questionnaire, I saw that most people that do read music magazines, who are young people that I asked, read Rolling Stones. So I took into the consideration that Rolling Stones is a very political, maybe a bit provocative, controversial magazine that hits pop culture as well. So I took that into consideration with my front cover, and I mentioned sexuality. I didn't want it to be too provocative or too controversial like Rolling Stone, so I only did that via the language. The simplistic style that I chose does not include many kickers, so I think young people would want to open the magazine to see what else is featured. The content, as I said, could be something explicit, which is undoubtedly something that young people nowadays are interested in. With the fact that it hits on sexuality as well, it's something that people may be interested in because it's not something they might talk about a lot, so maybe they could go into the magazine and identify themselves with. Alliteration. I use sexuality, songs and secrets, therefore it's just catchy and so would stick to their heads, and they can take that into account when buying the magazines and talking about it. It also uses sibilance, So again, it is catchy and will stick to their heads. The masthead stands out, I think, with its edgy style. So I think it's for young people who don't feel like they have to conform in society and conform in general. So I think my demographic reflects how the masthead is, just individual and very different. Also, the picture that I used, it has a very intriguing facial expression, so a young audience might be interested in how this artist is depicted in the magazine and therefore make them want to read on. My double page spread. Firstly, I use the exclusive slug, so young people may feel like they're getting an insight into something only they can see or not a lot of people can. The whole article could be useful for aspiring young artists because they can see how this artist has gotten into the industry and only began her journey into music recently. So no prior knowledge is required since the article is very explanatory, so reaches a wide audience within the demographic. I use these Polaroid pictures because I think it's something very contemporary. Young people nowadays are very interested in sort of vintage look about things in Polaroid pictures. And I used the pull quote. It relates to relationships, so it will entice readers to read the article if that's the first thing they see, because it is an interesting topic. And I took into consideration the eye line that they'd be, so the first thing they see would be the title, and then following on, bearing in mind the C shape, would be the pull quote. So if they read a pull quote mentioning relationships, it would probably be something that girls and boys would want to read on. I included web links because I think I wanted my magazine voice to be contemporary and up to date with its modern audience. So the fact that they are very big on the internet and promoting these young people on the internet, I think they would reach a wider audience of young people that are online. And as obviously technology is something that nowadays all young people are into and involved with. So I think it's very crucial that the article hits on something to do with technology. Like the front cover model, I used a very young model, so it's someone that young people can relate to. She's got stylish and trendy clothes, for example the Ray-Bans, so it's something that young people will want to aspire to have or be interested in. Now I used very, as I said, colloquial, informal, slangy language. So for example, an example is the £30 crappy Topshop top. Now any girl could familiarise themselves with this quote. It's quite comical too, and as I said, because I want to reach to more girls in my demographic, I chose this quote because it's something that young girls could really relate to. Another example is the words cuppa and you know. Now using cuppa, that's slang, it's a very casual register, and you know makes it a very personal link with the audience. Finally, on the end of the article, I added this bit on how people can be more informed about the artist. Now, by using the words catch and you can, it's a direct mode of address, talking personally to the reader. And I also mentioned our location, Hoxton Square Bar, which is a cool, trendy place that may relate to the target audience and is probably somewhere they might go or would want to go. On my table of contents, I added a bit of a comical humour that would keep teenagers engaged. So for example, here, 60 seconds with Lady Bybee, answering all our wonderful questions which may have lasted more than 1 minute. I also use language such as local club goers and music lovers. It instantly sets a tone to what magazine audience might be like, so young people can identify themselves with this. I also added a subscribe section, and via having a question, want to get the best price possible for weekly issues of Voice magazine, this builds a personal relationship with the reader. Question 6. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? I think the main thing that I've learned is how to use Photoshop. I wasn't familiar with it before, so I had a long way to go. However, one of the main things I used was the brush tool, because it's something very easy to do, and I think it's something that makes any page stand out more and make it more interesting. Secondly, I learnt how to edit pictures on Photoshop, so using the enhance button to adjust the colour, hue, saturation, etc. I also use spot healing brush. For example, on my airbrush picture, I took out all the things like spots and imperfections. Magic Wand tool was very useful to me because you can highlight any section. For example, here I could highlight this and make it any colour I would want to. And finally, this was the one that I mostly use, which is the type tool, which you can add any text to any page in any layer. At home I used Picasa and Picnic. Now this is a picture that I potentially was going to use on my contents page. Now I think Picasa and Picnic is very useful because it gives you effects that you could do on Photoshop, but it probably would take you a while. So you can have very easy effects like cross-process or a vintage look. I did have a prior knowledge on how to use Excel, however I used it in this magazine process when making graphs on my music questionnaire. So for example, I made pie charts and I made bar graphs as well, which is something very easy to do. I also use SlideShare a lot. It is very easy to make and doesn't take long. And I also use the embed code to put it on my blogger. On the internet, I use this website to make videos, which is very easy as well because here you have a workspace. You can put any videos or images you want, and then you can add effects and text, and then you can just produce a video. The blogger was the main thing as well because that's where I could present all my work. And here is how to put an embedded code on your blogger and then just publish it. Question 7. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to the full product? Firstly, from my front cover, the main thing that stands out for me is the amount of text compared to my new cover. I think that I learned how to make a front cover really successful and effective without having to have its conventional features. So I think both look very successful to me and effective. However, this one especially looks more professional and looks more stylish without having to have the same amount of text. Secondly, another key thing that I think I learned to do well was to work on the alignment. As you can see, nothing is aligned properly, whereas here I ensure that everything is conventional and sticks to proper lines. And I did that by learning how to use Photoshop, grid and ruler tools. Another thing as well is the colours. As you can see here, everything is very bright pink coloured. So I think it would only reach to a girl a female gender demographic. Whereas here, by being black and white, I think that's a stylish sort of effect that could reach to any gender. With my table of contents, firstly, I learned how to include a magazine name, issue number and date, which I think is vital because it reminds the reader of what they're reading and when. I had better fonts, I think. I think these fonts look a lot more professional and conventional than these. Proportions as well. I think I learned how to make sizes more realistic within the page. I also had to learn how to make better effects. So for example, the colours of my pictures stand out a lot more and are a lot more interesting than these colours, for example, black and white and sepia looking ones. I also learned how to have conventional features on my page. So for example, a subscribe section, whereas here there is none. Editorial pillars as well. I learned how to add more text and make things a lot more detailed than just this, which probably wouldn't interest people as much. I also learned how to engage the reader via the eyeline. Now, on a A4 sized single page, the eyeline would go as follows. Whereas here, by placing the image wall on the left side, I think it's not as effective as putting it on the right hand side. And overall, just on photo editing as well, all my pictures are much more better edited than these. In relation to my double page spread, which I didn't do for the school magazine, however I did for music, I did learn a few things. So for example, effects. As you can see, all these images, I've used effects. I learned how to use a pull quote effectively and a slug. Page numbers as well, it's very important. And overall, how to make something look very professional and
Can you go back 2 slides, please, to your double page spread? Yeah. Can you tell me the significance of your signature and also the marks on your Polaroids? So I think you have them circled on your previous slide, but you haven't actually commented on them.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think by having a signature here, that makes a very personal relationship to the audience, because I think if they see an artist's signature, they might feel like they're getting personally an autograph from the artist, and I think a direct relationship is built there between the article and the reader. And I think the marks, I added these marks on a different layer. I got the image, their passport stamps, and I think by adding that over pictures, not only does it add a cool effect that will appeal to the young demographic, but it relates to the article of On the Road with Rianne Ray. And I also added this kind of thing here via this brush that I downloaded, which is similar to the stamps that I added.
And if you just go to your cover. Yeah, on your cover, do you think you'd stick to this style of editing and photography on your cover for every issue?
Maybe, yes. I don't think the simplistic style is something I'd stick to, because I think that's just something more exclusive, especially with the topics talked about. I wanted it to stand out, not against any other kickers. However, I like the airbrush effect that I created. I think, bearing in mind my demographic is very young people, they want things looking perfect, looking very cool, looking very stylish, and I think having this very airbrushed, symmetrical look is something I'd probably stick to. But however, the direct eye contact is probably something I'd vary. Maybe have some pictures not having the direct eye contact, maybe looking different ways, which would still attract the readers because they still want to read on and see what the article's going to be about.
Okay, good. Thank you.